The brutality of caveman life was a story of survival. 15,000 years ago, before cities, before writing, before history itself, humanity existed in its most vulnerable form. For them, survival was never guaranteed. Food was scarce, winters were harsh, and every step into the wild carried risk. Predators stalked the same forests humans hunted in. Illness spread without warning, and there were not even remedies to rely on. So how did humans survive such hardships? Archaeological evidence shows that violence was common, disease was deadly, and nearly half of all children never lived long enough to become adults. What we call disaster, they simply endured as part of life. This was the brutal reality of the caveman lifestyle, a world where every day was a struggle and survival was the only measure of success. For a long time, people have argued about what early human life was like. Some say our ancestors lived in peace, moving from place to place as hunter-gatherers in balance with nature, and others picture them as violent raiders, always fighting each other, but the truth seems to be closer to the second idea. Violence was not rare in prehistory. It happened again and again, shaping daily life. So one of the clearest examples comes from Nataruk in Kenya, a site about 10,000 years old. Archaeologists found the remains of 27 people there. Many showed clear signs of violent deaths. Some skulls had deep cracks, necks were broken, and stone arrowheads were still stuck in bones. A few bodies looked as if the people had been tied up even before they died. Another important site lies further north, along the Nile River in modern Sudan. It is called Jebel Sahaba and dates back about 13,000 years. More than 60 people were buried there, and nearly half of them had injuries from weapons. Some skeletons had arrow or spear points stuck in them, while others showed wounds that had healed, meaning these people had been attacked more than once. They survived earlier violence only to die in later attacks. This suggests that fighting was not just a single event, it was part of normal life. The evidence of brutality also appears far away in Europe. In Talheim, Germany, a mass grave from about 7,000 years ago tells a terrible story. Over 30 people, men, women and children, were killed and buried together. Most had crushed skulls, likely from stone axes or heavy clubs. At Herxheim, Germany, hundreds of human bones were found broken, cut and cooked. Clear evidence of cannibalism, possibly for survival or ritual purposes. When we look at these discoveries, it's clear that early humans did not live in peace. Groups raided each other, fought over resources, or broke apart when alliances failed. They were massacres, revenge killings, and battles that could wipe out entire communities. Another German site, Schöneck-Kilienstetten, shows a similar story. Here, archaeologists found more victims in a mass grave. Many had their shin bones deliberately smashed. This could have been an act of cruelty, or a way to stop people from running away if they were still alive. At Ovnet, Germany, 33 human skulls, mostly women and children, were found stacked in pits with red ochre, likely the result of ritual execution. So, long before humans became apex predators, they were prey. In the Paleolithic world, people shared their landscapes with some of the most dangerous animals to ever walk the earth. Every hunt risked becoming the hunted. Archaeological and fossil evidence makes it clear. Predators left their mark on our ancestors, sometimes literally. At sites in South Africa, fossilized hominin bones bear the puncture marks of big cats. Leopards were especially dangerous, often ambushing lone individuals and dragging them into trees to feed. The Taung child, a famous Australopithecus fossil dating back nearly 2.5 million years, shows skull injuries consistent with a bird of prey attack. Even hundreds of thousands of years later, during the Ice Age, humans faced lions that were larger than today's species, saber-toothed cats with formidable canines, and packs of hyenas strong enough to overpower a small group. Also, water sources brought additional risk. In regions of Africa and Eurasia, crocodile attacks were a deadly hazard, striking when humans came to drink or gather water. Fossilized remains of early hominins sometimes carry bite marks from these reptiles, evidence of the perils faced at the river's edge. But predators were not the only danger. Hunting itself was risky, requiring close encounters with large and powerful animals. Archaeological finds show fractured bones, dislocated joints, and embedded weapon points, signs that humans often suffered injuries while trying to bring down prey. Mammoth hunts, for example, were high-risk, high-reward endeavors. A successful kill could feed an entire group, but one misstep meant being trampled or gored by tusks. At Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic, mammoth bones arranged in settlement structures suggest repeated large-scale hunts, but also reveal the immense dangers hunters faced. Even smaller prey was not without risk. Wild boars, bison, and elk could all charge when threatened, leaving hunters injured or killed. Without advanced weapons or medical aid, even a broken limb could prove fatal in the long term. The bones of prehistoric people tell this story clearly. Frequent fractures and stress injuries are common in the archaeological record, showing that hunting was as punishing as it was essential. Predators and violence were dangers people could see, but disease was the silent killer in the prehistoric world. Early humans had no medicine and no idea what germs were. Because of this, even a small cut or a simple fever could turn deadly. Archaeology and genetics show how deeply illness shaped human life. And the clearest proof comes from the graves of children. Almost half of all prehistoric children never lived long enough to become adults. Many died in their very first year of life from infections, hunger, or problems during birth. For mothers, childbirth itself was one of the biggest risks they faced. Fossil evidence shows that women's hips were narrow compared to the large heads of human babies. This made labor long and dangerous. Without doctors or tools to help, many mothers and babies died during delivery. Even for those who made it past childhood, life was really vulnerable. The average life expectancy was only about 30 years. If someone survived the dangerous early years, they could sometimes live into their 40s or 50s. Still, most never reached old age. Infections were a constant threat. A cut from a stone tool could easily get infected and spread through the body. Jawbones from prehistoric skeletons showed damage from abscesses and gum disease, which in many cases would have caused death. Hunger also left marks on the body. Many skeletons show lines on their teeth called enamel hyperplasia. These lines formed when children suffered through periods of starvation or serious illness. They are permanent scars of the cycles of hunger and disease that people endured. For those who caught them, survival often depended on the care of family or companions, but many did not make it. During the Ice Age, large parts of the world went through long cycles of cold. Winters could drag on for months, freezing the land and making plants and animals hard to find. Even when the weather warmed, sudden droughts or floods could wipe out food supplies. Without farming or ways to store food for the future, people had to depend on what they could hunt or gather each day. A failed hunt or a poor season of gathering could push whole groups into famine. The skeletons of prehistoric people show signs of malnutrition and slow growth, proving that food shortages were common. These marks are scars of repeated cycles of hunger. Hunting itself was never reliable. People sometimes spent enormous time and energy organizing a hunt, only to come back with nothing. When that happened, they had to fall back on nuts, roots, or wild plants. Archaeologists have found traces of wild grains on ancient grinding stones, showing that people sometimes crushed seeds into flour when food was scarce. But this fallback diet was far from secure. Starvation also left long-term damage on the body. Some skeletons show bone-thinning deformities caused by vitamin shortages, rickets caused by lack of vitamin D, and scurvy caused by too little vitamin C were both present in prehistoric remains. And nature too made things even harder. Floods could wash away camps while droughts dried up rivers and forced people to move. Groups had to migrate again and again, chasing animal herds or searching for new food sources. Archaeological evidence of these seasonal journeys shows how much energy was spent just trying to keep up with shifting environments. Every move came with risks, exhaustion, failure, or death. Life in the Paleolithic world was harsh, and the human body carried the proof. Fractures are among the most common findings in prehistoric remains. Long bones, arms, legs, and ribs frequently show signs of breaks. Some healed, leaving clear calluses where the bone knitted itself back together, but others showed no sign of recovery, suggesting the person died shortly after the injury. Hunters often bore the brunt of these traumas as they faced dangerous animals and relied on close-range weapons that exposed them to goring, trampling, or falls during pursuit. Head injuries were also common. Many skulls from archaeological sites bear depressed fractures caused by blunt force, either from interpersonal violence or accidental blows during hunting and tool-making. Some injuries healed, showing that individuals lived for years after the trauma, though likely with lasting pain or impairment. Wear and tear from daily labor also added to the burden. Prehistoric people walked long distances, carried heavy loads, and worked with stone tools for hours each day. Their skeletons show clear evidence of repetitive stress, worn joints, arthritic spines, and degenerative damage in knees and hips. Studies of Neanderthal remains, for instance, reveal bodies marked by the toll of a physically demanding lifestyle, often compared to the stress levels of modern athletes. Some skeletons show healed injuries so severe that survival would have been unlikely without assistance. For example, Shanidar 1, a Neanderthal discovered in Iraq, lived for years despite a withered arm, blindness in one eye, and serious leg injuries. This suggests that his group helped him endure, providing food and protection, yet for many such support could only delay the inevitable. For early humans, survival was not something they could choose. It was the one thing that shaped every single day. Life was a constant struggle for food, shelter, and safety. Failure in even one of these areas could mean death for a person, or sometimes for a whole group. There were no food stores, no permanent homes, and no backup plans. Every day was a cycle of work, danger, and endurance. Food was always the first concern. Hunter-gatherer groups lived off what they could find around them. Women and children usually searched for berries, nuts, roots, and tubers, while men went on hunts for animals. But hunting was risky and uncertain. One failed hunt could leave everyone hungry. Longer periods without success could weaken the entire group. Hunger and malnutrition were regular parts of life, especially during harsh winters or in times of drought. Shelter gave only limited protection. People often lived in caves, rock overhangs, or temporary huts made from branches, hides, or bones. These were fragile and did little to protect against wind, rain, or snow. Fire was essential. It kept people warm and scared away predators, but it needed constant care. Gathering wood took time and energy, and if the fire went out in freezing conditions, the whole group was at risk. Life also demanded constant physical effort. People traveled long distances on foot, carrying tools, food, and sometimes children across rough landscapes. The stress of constant movement left clear marks on their bones and joints. Unlike modern humans, they did not have specialists or fixed roles that allowed some to rest. Everyone, young or old, had to contribute to survival. Predators added another layer of danger to everyday life. Getting water, collecting plants, or even gathering wood for fire always carried risks. A single mistake, like getting too close to a river, could mean a crocodile attack. Walking into thick forests could bring encounters with lions, leopards, or hostile human groups. Danger was never far away. So this was the story of early human life, a relentless, unforgiving struggle where every day tested strength, courage, and endurance. This was the brutal reality they lived, and the story of a lifestyle that demanded everything and gave nothing in return.